Ron from Ronald Law. In this video, we're going to talk about hiring a leasing broker. Ron from Ronald Law, and if you subscribe to this channel, you'll notice that I usually don't wear a jacket, but this is a special occasion. I've kind of shaved my scruff here, and I'm trying to look pretty for you guys to be entertained on camera. All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about how to hire a leasing broker for a commercial property. All right, this is going to be, call it a multi-tenant, single-tenant building. You can have industrial, office, retail, any of these major use types where you're going to need tenants to fill space, fill vacancy. And again, this is usually separate than a property manager. A property management company may have this service in-house, but you may not have property management. A lot of net leased buildings don't have a third-party property manager, so you're going to need to hire a leasing broker. Now, just by way of background, I'm an industrial owner. I've gone through this process in filling vacancies for my industrial buildings. These are, again, net leased buildings. And so I've had to go through the difficult process of vetting. I probably know dozens. I don't know if it's hundreds, but I know dozens of industrial brokers that all want to do leasing. It's a difficult process. So here are my top tips on what questions to ask, and my advice. If you watch some of my other videos where I talk about hiring professionals, vendors, that sort of thing, is to create a standard list of questions. Pop them in an Excel sheet and make sure that you ask identical questions, standardized lists of questions for the broker, so that you can accurately compare the responses and you have apples to apples comparisons, right? You don't want to set somebody up for failure by asking somebody a slightly different question and then they don't deliver what you're expecting. So here's some kind of the major steps, right? You need to figure out your own goals first. You're an owner, you're an investor, maybe you have a partner. What are your goals for leasing up this space? If you're a retail, it's incredibly important to have complementary tenant uses. I talk about that in my other video, how to get retail tenants, but it's still true in this video, right? You want to make sure the uses of noise, parking, public access, the frequency of vehicles. Are they going to have a lot of deliveries? Are they going to have a lot of clients coming in? Are they going to have big trucks? Where are they going to park? You want to make sure that your uses, and you don't set your tenants up to just, be at each other's throats because they hate each other. That's going to make them in turn hate the location and the space, and then they're not going to renew. They're not going to be willing to sign increases. So overall, it's just bad. You really want to be conscious of this when you're selecting your tenants. And I think once you set out that goal, what your pricing, what your return should be, what are complementary uses, then you can go out and you can start Googling for just some of the top brokers. Go look at the CBRE, the JLL guys, Stream, all these partners. They're huge national firms. Go look for the top guys and just contact them, right? See if they're interested. See what their recent transactions, see what their leasing advertising says, the recent transactions, and then see if it's a good fit for your building, right? This is going to be based a little bit on geography, mostly on asset type, and then size and quality of the building, right? I think those are probably the two most important. Are these brokers that you're reaching out to? If you're leasing up, say, 25,000 square feet of 75,000 square feet, are they talking about signing 500,000 square foot leases? Are they talking about 300,000 square foot leases? Because if so, those tenants and that institutional player world is very different than you just trying to lease up 25,000 square feet. Still, it's respectable. I don't mean to downplay it, but you want the broker that is hungry for your business, and that means finding the right size. If they've been doing a ton of deals and they're dealing with the FedExes, with the UPS, with national distribution for camera systems, they're not going to have that same relationships with the buyers or the tenant reps that deal with a regional plumbing company or a regional concrete foundation. That's who would be probably a better fit for a multi-tenant 25,000 square foot space. That's, still can be credit, right? They can still be really strong tenants. And I think that's kind of a misconception, is that people think of, credit tenants, you have to be publicly traded. You got to be, huge. I really disagree. There's such a broad range of, quote, strong credit tenant. There are regional companies that have audited financials. They've got robust systems and leadership in play. They have shareholders, but they're nowhere near the interest of wanting to be publicly traded. They don't want to go for credit, right? They don't necessarily need a D&B rating. They don't need to be rated by Moody's. And so anyway, there's a big gulf. But figure out what kind of tenant would be good for you. What types of spaces are they currently in, and is that a match for your building? Because once you do that, you're preparing yourself to talk to the right brokers. I'm not suggesting you need to interview like 5 or 6 or 8 brokers. Hopefully, if you do this research, you'll be able to narrow it down to maybe top 3, top 4 at most, because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time and energy on your part to interview all these people. So I totally understand that, but let's keep going on the list. Another big part is the vacancy versus getting rent. And that's a big disalignment or disincentive between certain brokers who they want to get a commission, right? They're only going to get paid if you sign that lease. And so they may push you to accept a tenant. But as an owner, a lot of times you'd prefer a vacant building, right? Your costs are lower, your risks are lower, and you don't handicap yourself by signing a long-term lease with a suboptimal tenant or a tenant that's going to be a pain in your side. So be conscious of that and try to voice that concern to the broker that you're very firm on your tenant qualifications, so they shouldn't try to push a tenant towards you that you're just going to reject, because you have no hesitancy rejecting a poorly qualified tenant. Ask the brokers what's their specialty. What is the asset class or the asset type that they love? What do they love doing deals on? Where is the primary source of their relationships? Because I think it would be very telling if they say, I love doing industrial, and I also love doing office, and I love doing this. To me, that's the kind of guy that's a little bit too broad. Unless you're a particular owner that owns buildings across multiple asset classes, you're going to want a specialist. You really want somebody to be very, very focused on your geography, your building size, your tenant mix. All of that should be very focused and specialized based on your needs. Now let's talk about the actual partnership. This is something that I think is really the secret. You really want to go for the 1-2 punch. And that is, you want the senior broker who's experienced, he's got all the deep relationships, he knows how to negotiate, he knows how to get deals done. But you want to ask and say, who's going to be mostly working on my file? Who's going to put together the flyer? Who's going to be looking at lease comps? Who's going to be doing some of the work in the trenches? And I would say, ask to talk to them. Try to build a relationship with them as well, because odds are they're going to be doing most of the lifting. If they're going to be cold calling, they're going to be doing the dialing. You want to build a relationship with this guy because he's the one who's really going to help you in the future and maybe get a deal done or bring a deal to the surface. So that's something that's, I think, a little bit unique. Talk to that. Don't just go off the headline, the top line name. Really dig in and care about who that junior is or who's working below them. So, that's kind of it. I think that's enough to get you started. Engage in the conversation. Ask them for advice about what would they do. What do they think? Obviously, lease rates are one part of it, but what are they seeing in the market for caps on CAM expenses? What are they seeing for lease length? Are we doing 3 years? Are we doing 5, 7, 10s? And what's realistic for the quality of the building? Should I do some TI now? Should I just, white box it? There's a lot of opinions about how to get the best tenant attracted to the space. And if you have, say, like an industrial building, I would love for a broker to drive out, look at even just Google Maps, ask some questions about the parking, about the truck court. And if they have some recommendations, that's what I like. I like something very specific about my property. And then they say, okay, owner, you can totally rent it out as is, but this is probably going to be your tenant base and this is the lease rate. If you could do X, X and Y, and I think it could cost X amount, 50, 100 grand, you could bump your lease rates to this, and you could get a better quality tenant in there that's more responsive and understands a little bit more of the interactions. So, having that type of plan, I think, is really critical, because The leasing broker hopefully is going to be a very long-term relationship. Yeah, it's my big thing. Play long-term games with long-term people. Your leasing agent is definitely somebody who's going to have smaller commission checks, but more frequent touches, more frequent interactions, and you can build that relationship with your leasing broker. Hopefully you have multiple properties. You can tell them that we can work together on multiple buildings so they can constantly have a source of income if they're interested in leasing up all of your buildings. And that can be a very compelling carrot for this leasing broker to work hard on finding you great tenants. And as well, it gives them the bonus of, don't put in crappy tenants that you're still going to be working there 2 years later, and then this tenant vacates or defaults. It's not going to produce, the type of relationship that you want. But that's it for this video. I hope it was useful, but leasing brokers are very different than your investment sales or your listing broker. They have two very different personality types. They have two different specialties. Their contact pools are very different, right? They don't know the tenant reps in your market. They don't know what the lease rates necessarily are. And so I highly recommend that you have two different brokers, two different hats, more relationships, more people to manage, but hey, it is what it is. Smash that like button. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.